Are you thinking about buying paddle clips to hold your paddles on your kayaks? Well, each one of these costs about 13 bucks. So one for each section of your paddle is over 25. Let me show you how to make it out of PVC for a buck or two. Stay tuned. I was using these paddle clips for the last couple seasons, and one of them finally broke in half. It just got used too much. I had two of them, one for each of my paddle sections. So that motivated me to come up with a hack, because I didn't want to spend 26 bucks to get two more of these. And so what you're going to need for this hack is some 2-inch PVC, a heat gun, something that is 1.25 inches, and I like using these 1-inch sections of PVC, but you can get 1.25 inch dowel. You're going to need a T-bolt, and then you're going to need some tubing with 1/4 inch interior dimension and a little bit of oil. And to keep your hands from getting toasty, you're going to need a set of gloves. So let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put this section in a vise, heat it to squish it down. Then we're going to stuff both of these in there to form the basic paddle clip. First step is to put just a little bit of oil on the bottom of these dowels, or in my case, the PVC. You'll understand why we want this lubed up a little bit later. Evenly heat the PVC, direct the hot air all over and also to the inside. This is why we have the oil in there, to be able to get this stuff down in there really nice. Hit it with some water to cool it off and let it take its form. Once this is cooled down, we need to cut a big chunk out of the middle. You can see I've marked in blue right here where I'm going to make the cut, because we want it to fold over just enough to be able to hold the paddles in place. I decided to go ahead and leave the PVC inserted in here because it gives me something to grab onto and hold this steady while I'm using the vibrator tool. There, we have our basic clip ready to go. Now for the next step. Go ahead and establish the center line down the middle, because this is where you're going to drill the holes for the T-bolts. And now you have a decision to make. Do you just do one T-bolt, or do you do two? Two will hold the paddle in there with less wiggle, but one will make it easier to get the paddle in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drill 2 holes, knowing that if 2 T-bolts bug me, I can always take one out, but it's harder to get one in. Now, one of those T-bolts will need to go fairly close to the center, maybe a little bit off center, because you're going to put this on the utility track, probably just using one T-bolt, and then have this skewed out to the side of your kayak. You're not going to really have these going parallel to your kayak when you put them into a utility track. I've got the T-bolts in, but I've got one more thing I need to do. The sharp threads on the T-bolts are exposed, and those would eventually ruin my paddle. So what I did is I went and bought some of this 1/4 inch vinyl tubing, and that'll fit right down over the top of these T-bolts, and the tubing will protect my paddle from damage. Now, one point when you're putting the tubing on the T-bolt that you're actually going to attach to your utility track, do not run it all the way to the bottom, because you need to be able to have room to work the nut and get this thing on and off. Now, obviously, if you unscrew the nut, it's going to push the vinyl off as well, but I'm going to leave a little bit of slack because my paddle's rounded and it'll never touch the threads down here at the bottom. I put the sections of paddle into the clip, and you can see that it holds it in there nice and tight. In fact, it's too tight. So what I want to do right now is gently heat the outside to allow this to bend out a little bit, but not too much, because I want to be able to put the paddle in here easily, especially since I'm going to be reaching around and back to do this. And then I'll do the other side as well. This is where it's going to take some art, because if it's too loose, the paddles are going to come out. Now you need to be careful when you do this. You don't want to damage your paddles. So I'm going to protect my paddles and just put the heat on the PVC. I had this extra piece of HDPE, and that's what I'm using to protect my paddles. I only did it for a little bit, and now I'm just going to let it cool down naturally. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's get it on the boat and do the last bit of fine tuning. So I've already let it cool after having the paddles in it, and that stretched out the clip just a little bit more. And now what I've got to do after I attach it to the utility track is test how hard it is to get the paddles in. And what you may have to do, which is what I did, is sand down the edges here to smooth them over to allow your paddles to fit in here nice and easily. Now the other thing I did is I took the drip guards off because I don't really need those, because I use my duct tape hack to keep the water from dripping down the shaft. And I'll link that hack up here above, because the drip guards do get in the way a little bit because these things are so close together, and the drip guards will stretch them out, push them out away from each other at the end, and make it harder to get into the clip. There we go. Well, thanks again to Rick for turning me on to how you can manipulate PVC for paddle clips. If you guys have any more great ideas, hey, send them on. I'll make a video. Comments? Throw them down below. Thanks.